Name is Manshi Asher. I live in Himachal Pradesh. I'm going to talk a little bit about issues from this region. But before I start, let me tell you a bit about myself. I actually do not belong to the mountains, as in that I'm not a native from here. I was born and brought up in the Middle East. I came from a conservative Gujarati family, and being from an urban area and also living away from my own native place, I was since childhood very attracted to or fascinated by rural areas, especially of the country. I did my bachelor's in psychology in Pune and my master's in social work at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. But I think that still at that time also one had a very romantic ideal of what one wanted to do, that wanted to contribute to the society. And I was also very attracted at the same time to a lot of the movements that were happening in the rural areas of the country, because in the campus there were a lot of discussions about this, and I wanted to do work on the ground. And I started with an honorarium of 5,000 rupees at that time, in the late 90s, and worked in Rajasthan for a while. Then I was also exploring working in Kutch. And then finally, I went to a place called Munsiari, which is in Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand. This is a pretty remote area, and this was the first time I was going to the mountains. My work in Munsiari was as part of Foundation for Ecological Security, was working with local community village forest councils called Van Panchayats. And Van Panchayats are very unique to Uttarakhand. It's an institution that was created way back in 1921, and there's a whole history of struggle behind it in the colonial period, when the British started, claiming forests, and then people started asserting their rights to forests because the British wanted to take control of forests for their commercial purposes. And that is when people fought against this, and then the British were forced to recognize that no, we have to leave some part of the forest for people to use because they are dependent on forests. And that is how this institution was created. So throughout Uttarakhand, every village almost has a certain part of their land which is common land, which is one panchayat land, and there is a whole panchayat that manages it, which is different from the usual panchayat, that is apart from that. After 5 years, one started realizing that there's a need to also see what is happening vis-a-vis forests and land and water in other parts of the country, and especially what is going on at the policy level. Working at the micro level is important, but it's also important to understand how policies get framed and how they impact people, and how people can resist these. And so I joined the National Center for Advocacy Studies in Pune, and as part of this group, which was working on people centered advocacy, we looked at issues of land, water, forests, and people and communities asserting their rights, especially in the indigenous lands of the Central Eastern Belt, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Jharkhand. I really wanted to come back to and work in the Himalayan region. And a lot of the learnings that I got from being associated with people's movements, with different campaigns, with NCAS, I felt like I wanted to take it to the ground and take it to the Himalayan region. And I shifted to Himachal about in 2007, and I started living and working here, traveling around the state. And we formed, a couple of friends came together and formed an informal collective called the Himdhara Environment Research and Action Collective. So Himdhara means the land of snow. Him is snow and Dhara is land or earth. And uh, the journey of Himdara has been about trying to understand what are the conflicts and contestations that people in Himachal have been going through, in especially in the last couple of years, because of various development policies and projects that the government has been pushing. To talk about why the ecology and the biodiversity of the Himalayas, why is it sensitive and different from the plains. So I think all of us know about the Himalayas, that it is the youngest mountain range, which was formed about just 70 million years ago. And it was actually formed when the Tethys Sea closed in and the Indo-Eurasian plates had a head-on collision. This was a process um, which started millions of years ago, and the mm, Himalayas are still getting formed. I think growing at a rate of almost 5 millimeters per year is what scientists say. And not only is it the youngest, but it's also the largest and the highest mountain range. Highest because it has almost 14 peaks which are more than 8,000 meters, and largest because if you just look at the scale or the span of the what is referred to as the Himalaya, starting from the Hindu Kush region in the west, then you have the Karakoram, you have up north you have the Tibetan Plateau, you have the Western Himalayas, Central, and then you move to the eastern Himalayas right up to the Mizo Hills. So it's a very diverse range because this is like a span of 2,500 kilometers, almost 3,000 kilometers. And if you look at the width, it's anywhere between 200 to 400 kilometers. But it is also special because uh, in this 200 to 400 kilometer, you have a massive diverse altitudinal range. First, you have the Tarai region, which is just when the mountains start forming, the the flat region below the mountains. Then you have an undulating lower Himalayas, which is lesser Himalayas, which are called the Shivaliks. Then you have a mid Himalayan region, and then you have the greater Himalayas, and slowly the tree line recedes, and then you have the trans Himalayan region, which is like a cold desert, and then you have like the Tibetan Plateau. So it's the climatic diversity as a result of the different altitudes is also pretty extreme, and having such a kind of even if you just like run your eyes through the landscape in a very small span, you'll get to see very very different kinds of vegetation. You'll get to see different kinds of biodiversity. So it has a lot of floral and faunal biodiversity. I mean, in India itself, if you look at the 50% of the floral biodiversity is housed in the Himalayan region, or you have 30% of the faunal diversity which is housed in the Himalayan region. So it's a hotspot in that sense, what we refer to as a hotspot. And it's very difficult to say. You will also have tropical forests, you have subtropical forests, you have temperate forests, you have alpine pastures, grasslands, then you have glaciers. It's also special because it's got these massive river systems. I mean, if you look at the Indian Himalayas, it's got the three major river systems, glacial snow-fed river systems: the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra. And it's the largest storage of water in the world. I mean, it's also called the third pole. So it's supporting more than 1.5 or 2 billion people who are dependent on this entire river system. I mean, if you look at the entire Himalayan region, it's I think almost 10 different kinds of river systems are fed. And in India itself, it's not just the water but also the sediment that is carried in these rivers, which is highly rich sediment, which has formed the Indo-Gangetic plains, which has which is highly fertile plains. So it's also giving the whole food security to the Punjab plains, the Indo-Gangetic plains, and the entire country, which are producing food for a large part of the country. So, if you just look at the entire region, it is very special. If we talk about mountain communities, especially in the Himalayan region, even today, a large part of the society lives in rural areas. In Himachal, for instance, 90% of the population still resides in villages. And so, land is really the mainstay of the local economy. And this is not just farmland on which people, of course, practice subsistence agriculture, grow food crops. It's the forest and the grasslands which provide various kinds of services that maintain also the farm economy. For instance, fodder and grass comes from here, and this makes possible livestock rearing, which then provides cow dung for manure, or provides milk, which is used to make ghee, and which is for local consumption as well, so it contributes to the local nutrition. Forests also provide fuel wood, and even though people now rely on gas cylinders for cooking, as far as heating water is concerned or indoor heating is concerned during winters, fuel wood is the main source, because for many villages which are especially far from the road head, it doesn't make sense to rely on any other source. Then you have leaf litter, especially from deciduous forests where trees, shed their leaves in the fall and autumn. This material, which is on the forest floor, is collected and is used for making bedding for animal sheds. It then feeds into the farm compost also. Then forests also provide medicinal plants. They provide food like ferns and tubers and roots, and they provide wood to make agricultural implements. And apart from all these various diverse materials which are used for house construction and day-to-day living, forests also feed into the groundwater system. They recharge streams, so they are also an important part of the larger ecosystem, and provide many ecosystem services. Then there are some communities across the Himalaya who practice agropastoralism, and for them the for common land, especially the alpine pastures, are very important, because this is where they migrate seasonally with their buffalo or sheep. Like you have in Kashmir you have the Gujar Bakarwals. In Himachal you have Gaddis, Gujars, Kanets, other kind of communities. In Uttarakhand you have the Van Gujars, and again they are important contributors to the wool and the meat economy. So firstly, the dependence on forests is for many things. Secondly, it is very high. Thirdly, agricultural productivity is maintained by the forest. So, there was a study a couple of years ago which said that in the mountains, to do agriculture, good agriculture on 1 unit of land, you need at least 6 units of forest. But even then, I mean, because the land holding size in the mountains is very small, and these are small patches or terraces that are created, compared to plains, the productivity and overall production is very low. Also, most of the places it's rain fed, where there are no irrigation systems. So it's not an occupation that provides a lot of income, which is why one of the reasons why in today's scenario people are moving out of agriculture, apart from being affected by various the farm economy is affected by other various crises, especially the ecological crisis, which is why people are moving out of agriculture as well. What you see is happening with the agrarian crisis throughout the country, and even in areas where income from agriculture is good, like in Himachal and Kashmir, you have horticulture, apple production, or commercial vegetable farming. there too, I mean, it is still, the commons also play a very important role, even if it is, even if there is a cash economy that is, contributing to farm income. Yeah, and still it's not enough to make people food secure through the year. I mean, food security is a big question for mountain areas, and uh, also another thing that makes farming very difficult in the mountains is that it's arduous and it's very labor intensive, and this entire set of activities around the livelihoods, women play a very important role in providing labor here, because they bring the fuel, they cut the grass, they virtually handle the entire livestock rearing. And the other thing about another important feature of this dependence is that traditionally people had been, because they had been living off the common land, especially, there are a lot of cultural practices and a lot of governance mechanisms that people had around conserving the landscape, because livelihoods were such that they were designed around the limitations of the topography and the local geography. So it was very important to, for communities to kind of evolve systems that helped in maintaining the balance. However, we are seeing that over the last couple of decades, especially last 100 years, obviously there has been, these systems have slowly started breaking down, and it, this probably began, I mean, one can say that one of the first big fractures that we see historically came with the British, where the British started taking control of the land and the forests, which earlier was essentially controlled by local, governance or local systems. And when the colonial government started surveying and mapping land and marking out areas which were commercially profitable, example, the sal forests in the Tarai, which were needed to build sleepers for railways or for shipbuilding, etc. That's when there was a real conflict between people and, let's say, the powerful forces, and this process of disrupting of local livelihoods, disrupting of ownership over land, of self sufficiency, and a certain resilience, or one can say a certain stability. It continued in the post independence period, especially because of the kind of model of development that was brought in into these areas. And that development model may have provided modern education, literacy, may have enhanced road connectivity, etc. But it also led to a massive change in the local land use, and also various socio-cultural changes, which also affected the economy and the local livelihoods. And so you had, on one hand, large dams like Bhakra and Tiri, and these were built for water, to provide irrigation in the plains areas and to generate electricity. And lakhs of people lost their lands, lost access to forests. A lot of forests were submerged in the Bhakra Dam, for instance. And there were lots of other activities also post independence, which like infrastructure building, road building, etc., which kind of led to loss of agricultural lands, forest lands. And this process then took a new speed post the 1990s. That was one of the things that has been a challenge for the Himalayan region, the entire development model. And on the other hand, throughout in the post independence period, we see that national forest policies and environmental laws, especially the model of conservation, which was implemented from the center, it
alienated people further from the forest. So, for example, you have protected areas like national parks, sanctuaries, etc., which restricted the access of graziers and pastoralists into these areas because they were considered as destroying the forests. So on one hand you can see the irony in the situation. On one hand you had the development model which led to construction of highways, dams, airports, industrial areas, which took away the lands of people. And on the other hand you have a conservation model that also alienated people from the forests and also from the livelihoods that were based on the forests. And currently these issues are still ongoing in the region, and are still continue to be a source of conflict and a very important part of the ecological crisis.